Two, one. All right.
Hello, y'all. Welcome back to Diabolicast, the show where we talk about movies and have our little discussions. I'm here with my co-host Jonathan. Jonathan, how are you?
I'm all right. Pretty tired.
Just trucking away,
Yep.
trucking away. There's been a lot of good movies and music lately, actually.
Mhm.
The new Nick Cave, which I really liked. The
Yes, it's probably
Kim.
one of my favorite of the year. One of my favorites of the year. Maybe my favorite. I'm kind of debating.
Yeah, there's so much good music this year. It's kind of hard to choose which album to choose. And I really like the Kim Petras album. I hadn't heard an album by her before, so I was actually quite surprised. She's got her own thing going.
Yeah, I think that's. I think her entire Turn Off the Light project is probably her best project thus far, which is weird because
Y-
there's really little promotion for it leading up to it, at least that I've seen. But
Well, yeah, because it was released as like two separate volumes, and then it
mhm.
kind of got combined into one project. So I guess the hype is kind of died down by the time they've released the full project. But it's a good project nonetheless, though.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm also really
Uh,
enjoying the new Angel Olsen album.
Oh yeah, I talked about that yesterday on my the radio show of my friend in RIL, and yeah, he really loved it as well. So, yeah, great album.
Reminded me a lot of like Kate Bush and people like that. It felt really nice. I hadn't heard a project of hers previously, so it was a fun discovery.
Yeah, it was quite incredible the amount of improvement she had from her last album. Like the singles I've heard of her last album sound completely different to like her new sound. So props to Miss Olsen if you're happening to listen to this podcast.
Which I doubt, but it would be cool if she was.
It'd be very cool if yeah. I would probably brag to all my friends about it. Just hey guys, Angel Olsen listens to my small movie podcast. What have you achieved?
Um, but
Yeah.
I'm assuming Titanic Rising is still your album of the year.
Oh yeah, it's kind of a hard album to beat for me because it is in my top 10 albums of like all time. So it's kind of hard to.
Yeah, for me it's between Nick Cave and Slater and Wise Blood and like there's a few others that kind of like are just rotating in my head.
Yeah, it's I really like Slater as well. I almost gave it a 9. I have to listen to it, but yeah, I really loved it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. It does like the 2000s pop sound really well.
Yeah, it kind of does what Charlie was doing on a self-titled, although that's a great album in its own right. I guess Slater's is slightly more consistent and more focused on like banger after banger, so in that way it's a bit more cohesive.
Yeah, and there's less auto tune too, which for the most part is not something I have a problem with on Charlie, but occasionally it's a little bothersome to me.
Yeah, I don't really mind autotune. Like, I understand what she's using it for. It doesn't really grate on me that much, but I'm not fussy when it comes to like, unless it's used like really badly, then yeah, I notice. But it was used very tastefully, so
Yeah.
yeah. All right, well, we're not a music podcast. We are a film podcast, but I would like to make clear that we are going to make a special announcement about kind of combining more of the two um, later in the podcast. So stay
Yes.
tuned for that whenever that happens. Um, but anyway, we recommended two movies last week. Uh, I recommended My Own Private Idaho, and Jonathan recommended Funny Games. Now, we're going to start with My Own Private Idaho. So I'll just give like a basic rundown of the plot here because watching the movie it might not be like apparent what the plot is until like halfway through really. But essentially, it's from what I know, it's kind of like a loose adaptation of like Shakespeare's Henry IV, that play, and it like follows this the main character Mike, who is kind of like a homosexual who like is a hustler in like the street gang, and he meets this other character Scott, played by Keanu Reeves, and they kind of in this business together. And eventually, Mike wants to go find his mother and go out on their own, so they decide to go out on their own and travel on like a highway and try to find the mother while a bunch of other stuff kind of happens. And I don't know, that's how I'd sum it up. Hmm.
Yeah, that sums it up pretty
Um,
well. But this movie is like separated into two very distinct halves.
yeah, the first half is like the hustler, more like abstract half, and the second half is the the search half, like the a bit more straightforward narrative structure in the second half for sure.
It's a lot more serious too. I thought
Mm.
the first half was pretty. I don't know that it was like completely serious. Like I, it
Mm.
didn't take itself that seriously. Um, at
No.
least I mean, if it did, it completely failed because like I found most of it like trying to be funny and it wasn't really my type of humor. But like as soon as like the campfire scene happened, I was invested.
Yeah, that campfire scene is absolutely like devastating in terms of like, I've never seen other films like capture that feeling so well and touch on those specific issues that a lot of people feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually quite amazing, and I think that scene alone gives enough reason for this whole film to because I think this film's message above all is kind of important, especially for the time that it was made. 1991 was released, so it was actually quite a bit boundary pushing at the time. I imagine you know it's definitely a more abstract film. Not only that, but it's dealing with you know in issues like narcolepsy, homosexuality, trying to find your parents. Although that's been done in many films before, I guess this is like a rare case where it's done in kind of a more like abstract and kind of weird way, at least from my perspective. Mm.
Yeah, it was very unique. Um, like at least in the presentation, you can tell that this is a Gus Van Sant movie. Um, who is kind of notorious for flip flopping between like really critically acclaimed and really horribly perceived movies.
Mm.
Because he did like the Psycho remake and stuff like that. But this is one of his more popular ones, and I've only seen this one and Good Will Hunting, which I love. And this one was I don't know. I felt I came out pretty conflicted. Like I think I really
Mm.
liked the more serious half. That was like there were funny parts of it. But like the second half to me was vastly superior to the first because I thought the acting in the first half was just really really bad for a lot of it.
Yeah, I think the acting got better as the film went along. I think um, by the time they reached, the kind of the big rundown mansion where all the hustlers are hiding out, the acting improved quite a bit. I think. Um, I thought that Keanu Reeves' acting in the first half, while not like terrible, was kind of lacking in certain parts. Maybe I was thinking too, I was focusing too much on it, but like as soon as the second half and maybe like the tail end of the first half, the acting got a lot better. So at least for me, anyway.
Yeah, I think River Phoenix was always good, and some of the hustlers were good, but like, yeah, Keanu Reeves, like you said, was not very good, and in a lot of places, and like I felt like the dialogue was trying to be like realistic, and it just came off as like it felt like it was trying to be realistic, but it felt like forced and unnatural. Like all the
Hmm.
characters just like state what's happening and like their motivations and stuff at parts, and I'm like, what? Like
Yeah.
who talks like this?
I think that might have to do with the fact that it's pulling lines from Henry IV, so um it's trying to be this whole like kind of not a parody per se, but like a homage and a direct ripping off not ripping off, but kind of a derivation of that story and stuff like that, which I get they were trying to do, but the problem is because it's not a straight ahead adaptation, it comes off as a bit jarring and tonally mixed to the point where you're like, okay, is this film straightforward or is it a homage to Henry IV? I don't understand what the filmmaker was trying to get at necessarily.
See, I haven't seen or read Henry IV, so I can't really comment on that. I'm not like plays have always been kind of hard to read for me, but well, if I
Yeah.
like the story enough, I can get through them. That's what I did with like Death of a Salesman, which I love, um, and stuff like that. But yeah, I thought most of it was really well shot, but like the first half was just very like there were a lot of like really pretentious monologues, and I hate using the p word, but it kind of
The P word.
it kind of applies here because like a lot of it was just it reminded me of like an early Makoto Shinkai movie where they're just like talking like about the themes of the movie like in like this really dry monologue, and I was just like
Yeah.
like the second half was so subtle and so emotionally gripping, and the first half was just like in your face. Like I was not sure what the tone was like going for, and like
Yeah.
once it hits the campfire scene, I loved it, but like up until then, I was just like, what? Where is this going? What is going on here? You know, like
Mm.
it just
I,
felt really messy.
I think I had literally had the same experience as you. Like I did a complete, not a complete 180, but I definitely really um, came up to the film when they started going on kind of the road trip and started, the second half of it. And I think that's when he kind of drops a bit more of the Henry IV angle. It's less apparent, and it commits to like the actual story at hand. So I think if maybe the Henry IV aspect was dialed down quite a bit, I think the movie would be like a bit more solid from first half to second half. But because Van Sant made that choice, it kind of feels like he doesn't know what it wants to be at times. You know?
Yeah, and I don't want to make it seem like I hated the first half because there were parts of it that I did enjoy, but like the second half, like they're two radically different halves, and the second one was so much better. Like, I teared up at the second half, and the first half was just like meandering and again pretentious. Like yeah, I was not.
Yeah, I mean, I know, on this podcast we hate using the dreaded P word, but it does come off a bit like that at times, And as you said, I did enjoy certain aspects of the first half, and like there was some chemistry with River and Keanu's character in the first half, and there was some great scenes of like the hustlers and some of the coverage they did of the mansion, and those scenes were kind of like intuitive and creative in a way. But the second half is where this film kind of really shines.
I felt like this entire movie had like really good set design and shots and blocking, and like I felt a lot of it was like intentionally blocked, and like I would have to
Yeah.
watch it again to really pinpoint what they were trying to do, but like there's a lot of like showing who's like the dominant like side of the scene, like who's in charge with the camera
Mm.
angles and blocking and everything, and I really liked that aspect of it. I wish it was a little more pronounced, but I actually no, I'm glad it stayed subtle. You know?
No, I don't. I think it was just the right amount. Like as you said, I appreciate the set design and the blocking that they kind of introduced into the mix. And once it gets out on like the highway and out when they're traveling, it definitely becomes more wide open, and the first half is a bit more claustrophobic and closed in terms of like your blocking, and then the second half comes more wide open. So they are definitely distinguished in that way, for sure. Um, I also wanted to talk about the scene in the second half. Let's just get into spoilers because I want to like dive into
All right.
that portion of the film. So, as I say all the time, go watch the movie. I don't know how you're still listening if you haven't seen the movie, but yeah, go watch the movie. Um, but however, basically, in the second half, it kind of details them trying to find the mother, and they end up going to Spain. Was it Spain? Is that
I
right?
thought it was Italy. Was it?
Is it Italy? Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they end up going to Italy, and they find out, they don't end up really finding the mother, and um, Keanu does a whole, hose before bros thing, and ditches his friend for this like random French Italian girl
Yeah,
or
River
whatever.
Phoenix gets cucked.
He gets cucked. He literally gets cucked. And after that happens, There's this whole restaurant scene where the um the kingpin guy finds the Keanu's character, and now he's rich and successful, and what have you. And it's kind of a bit of a weird ending. So it's a weird way to end the film.
Yeah,
Mm.
I really liked that scene because there was a lot of juxtaposition, and like until like Keanu's character definitely took a much different path than River, who like just fell back into the same hole. Like, cause he tried to make it out. He tried to like get out of that lifestyle with somebody he loved, and then that person who loved or he loved like ditched him, and so
Yeah.
he just went back to his old lifestyle, which is so depressing, but it's like something that could happen. And the acting, like especially from Keanu in those later scenes, are really is like actually really good. You know?
Yeah, fantastic acting, which is why I don't know what the issue was in the first half. I don't know whether it was a direction thing or he was by the time the last scene came along, he was well kind of he warmed up to his character and really started to really commit to the role and perform it well. I don't know what the issue was, but despite that, it's really good acting, and yeah, it is kind of a shitty thing to do, and I guess that kind of owes aspects to the play that it derives from, but also it's a very relevant message in that one person you know kind of has a tragic ending in terms of like, oh, goes back to the same things that he was doing in the first half of Phoenix's character, and Keanu's character, who was definitely the more like streetwise and more like charismatic of the two, ends up with the girl and the life and stuff. So it's a very interesting contrast between those two lifestyles for sure.
Yeah, it feels very Shakespearean, which is it felt more Shakespearean than anything in the first half, honestly.
Yeah, and I think it's great when it commits to one ideal, like when it goes full with the whole Shakespeare concept, or when it goes full with the whole, Lost Highway, just a, road trip type thing. So I think it's the movie's at its best when it commits to one or two. When it tries to mix both, it just ends up a bit conflicting, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very messy. I think I liked it overall, but it was just I felt like the first half could have been done much better, and thus like the later scenes would have had more emotional impact on me. But like as
Yeah.
it stands, I think it was good. I just think it could have been a lot better than it was.
Yeah, I don't think that, I would have, if I was to direct this movie, it would be a very hard script to like make cohesive and just those emotional beats in place, keep it cohesive. But I think Gus, for the most part, did a good job with the script he had. You know, it's a very hard. It seems like a very hard movie to like kind of plot and make kind of work because it's going for so much, and it's kind of abstract but also straightforward at the same time. So
Yeah, I think the result is a very, it just there was a lot of potential, and I felt like the second half fulfilled it, and the first half just didn't get there. I don't know.
yeah, I know people who love both halves equally, and I could see why, but especially thinking back on the movie now, it's very clear now that it's the two halves are like nearly completely different movies in terms of goals and plot framing and stuff like that. You know.
It's like Full Metal Jacket if the quality of the halves were reversed. Although I will still defend the second half of Full Metal Jacket till I die.
I think it's just a solid movie. I think that movie in particular, but look, I don't think that there is it. I don't think there's necessarily in my Own Private Idaho. There's necessarily like a big quality gap, like, oh, the first half is terrible and the second half is like a masterpiece or anything. But there is definitely that quality difference for sure. Um, I remember I think I asked a question ages ago on this podcast, something like a movie with a bad first half or and then a great second half, and this answers the question, I guess.
Yep. which contrasts like a movie like The Place Beyond the Pines, where I don't know, it falls apart in the last third. Because the last third of that movie is
Yeah.
freaking garbage. Some of the worst acting I've ever seen. And I just completely butchered the first two halves, which are or two-thirds, which are great. No, it was very disappointing.
That's the only thing that's like, I probably would have watched it by now, but I'm kind of scared of that last portion. But in terms of, because I hate when a movie completely just drops the gun and just becomes awful in the last, like, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes. And it's a bad feeling because that's what it leaves you with. Like, despite all the quality of like the first, half or the first three quarters of the movie, it's that last bit that's going to stick in your head, and that's the thing, you know.
Yeah. So what would you give My Own Private Idaho?
Uh, I gave it an 8 when I initially watched it. I guess if I was to re-rate it, it'd be a 7, but I think the themes, and the ambition, what it was trying to achieve, it'd be an 8. But if I was actually being a bit more, critical of like how it actually executes this, it'd probably be a 7. Yeah.
That's fair. I gave it a 6. Um, I think now it would be a 6 or a 7. It's somewhere in there, in that range, because it is very ambitious. I do think the second half has a lot of great scenes. I just felt like up until that point, it wasn't really interesting me, and a lot of it was just kind of, it was just very odd. Like it didn't really totally fit in with the rest of the movie, and it definitely wasn't what I was expecting. And once I
Yeah.
like adjusted to that, it wasn't as bad. But then once like that campfire scene happens, and from there on out, it's great. So
Yeah, for sure. Before we move on, I just want to point out I love those scenes where, when Keanu has like sex with that girl, they have those like frozen shots where it shows them in like different positions, and I thought that was kind of creative. And instead of showing the actual sex scene, it showed like a more abstract, kind of like artistic rendering of like a sex scene, if that makes sense.
yeah, I thought those were really well shot because it was like I don't know, it just felt really much more natural and in line with the movie, which sounds weird, but I don't know,
Yeah.
like and later with River Phoenix and that German guy, and it's just like all of it felt in line with the movie and the style it was trying to create, and so I enjoyed those scenes. I thought they were really well done.
Yeah, they were quite well done. Yeah, I thought I didn't want to end this discussion without mentioning that because it was probably one of my favorite aspects of the film for sure. Well, I think this next film, which is I think quite surprised me, especially, um, in terms of like how crazy it is. We're talking about Funny Games, of course. Now you recommended it, John, so why don't you kind of introduce it for us?
All right, Funny Games. This was a remake of the 1997 Funny Games of the same name, which was I don't remember. I think it's Austrian. I'm not sure, but
I
it's
think you're right. Yeah, I think that's correct.
it was shot in Austria, I believe. But it's from Michel Haneke, who also directed the original. And this came out 10 years later in 2007 and stars Naomi Watts and Tim Roth as like a I don't want to say they're rich, but they're definitely upper class family who go to their vacation home, and these two weird um two weird like college age little older student people start messing with them. They're played by Michael Pitt and Brady Corbett, and yeah, from there on out, it becomes the best takedown of horror and thriller movies ever assembled.
Yeah, this film is apt to its title, like Funny Games. Like it is kind of funny. Like I know it is. It's disturbing at points, but it is kind of funny at the same time. There is a humorous aspect to it. Um,
Especially initially with like the John Zorn music and like the egg scene, which is absolutely hilarious.
I've never laughed harder at a music cue in my life. I don't think I have. It's yeah, there's that bit in the start, and then there's bit with the kid in the house and Michael Pitt's character where the song comes back in, and it's always very jarring and very funny when it happens. Yeah, I love that choice.
I feel like we kind of can't talk about this movie much without going into spoilers because we don't. I don't want to ruin it for people because the surprise will be. It's too great. Just go watch it.
Yeah, if you're interested, go watch it. Just be mindful that it's a very kind of intense watch. I wouldn't recommend it for the light of heart, but if you feel like it, go watch it. If you don't feel like you can stomach it, just continue listening to us, I guess.
Just not. It's not a movie you want to watch with mom. It's not one for mom.
No, it's you gotta pretty much by yourself or by your really woke film friends. Pretty much, that's the only people you can really.
See,
Oh,
I went into this movie knowing that it was this very, it was a deconstruction of horror, and knowing that it improved my experience greatly. Although, unfortunately, knowing that, I felt like some of the novelty of a first viewing was kind of lost for me. But I still thought it
yeah.
was. You noticed so many subliminal things.
Well, yeah. Even if you didn't know that going in, I think the film kind of makes it a little apparent, especially when it breaks the fourth wall, or like when there are certain lines like I think I wrote one down. I wrote, "You should never forget the importance of entertainment," which completely sums up the film's goals in like a nutshell. I think.
Yeah. Like I had this recommended to me by like I can't say it. Patricia Taxon, who has made like
Yeah.
multiple references to it in our videos, and she's talked extensively about it. She has a video that's actually great called "Funny Games Unveiling Fiction," but essentially she said that she's compared the two and like the acting differences of the two main so-called villains of the movie are like they're night and day. Like there's so much more charismatic in this movie and so much more they're like devilishly funny. This is a really great dark comedy in addition to a pretty grueling horror movie.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the two performances by Michael Pitt and who was the other guy's name? The
Brady Corbett.
Yeah, Brady Corbett. Yeah, they were absolutely fantastic. I thought they played the line between being darkly disturbing and charming, and they had that really good balance. And they were, I think their characters are kind of a parody of like the modern millennial or the Ivy League kind of student in a way. Like that's how it came off to me. Like just the way that, so condescending and patronizing and just like, but they think they're doing nothing wrong. It's kind of like that attitude. I thought that was really kind of hilarious in that way.
Yeah, this movie, there were points that I laughed because, even though I think the movie as a whole should be taken seriously, both as a satirical deconstruction of horror and also as a straightforward home invasion thriller that's really, really disturbing. But like I said, the egg scene and some of their lines and I thought um like when they return at the end with Naomi Watts' character. I thought that scene was kind of funny.
It's like the golf ball and the
Hmm.
it's like it's like what up motherfucker when they come in with the golf ball, and it's just like and Tim Roth's character is just sitting there like, oh no, not these people again. It's serious, but it also has a kind of a funny undertone to it, which kind of makes it really engaging.
Yeah, this movie is really thrilling, which is kind of an unpopular opinion apparently because most people think this movie is boring. And
Really?
yeah, because that's the point of the a lot of the scenes of the movie. Like once Michael Pitt and Brady Corbett's characters leave, you're just left with this recovering family. Like you see, there's that one
Yeah.
take where Naomi Watts, her character, hops out of the room in Tide, and unties herself and then comes back and just sits there with Tim Roth's character, and it's heartbreaking and sad, and you're like, I felt guilty for enjoying the movie as much as I did up until that point. Like that's why it's so grueling, is because it's so realistic in parts.
Yeah, he's definitely, I wouldn't say guilt tripping the audience, but bring attention to the fact that enjoying these movies where these people suffer and the consequences of doing such a thing, you know, and once those two, the two I really kind of like, golf, guys get, kind of they leave the film is empty, and it starts dragging intentionally, like the pacing and the film starts becoming slower intentionally,
Yeah.
and
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, and I think that's maybe one of the few times in a film where a problem in the film is actually you know, its its strength in
Yeah,
a way.
it's the artistic point. I mean, like, people who criticize it for being boring, like, that's the same thing I would praise it for doing, is like boring these people who just want gore and gore and gore. And that's another thing that almost all, like, with one exception that doesn't even count, um, because I will talk about that scene in a bit, I'm sure, but the
Mm.
violence is all off screen, and
Yes.
he's like blatantly teasing the audience, as are like the two main villains. Like, and that's just brilliant to me. Like, the fact that he's made this movie that looks like a cliche home invasion movie, and that people will go and see because it's like dark and disturbing and probably gory, and it's none of those things, and it's just grueling to watch. And I thought that was just like a brilliant, just, and like another thing it comments on is like how like everything is in the hands of like the villains, and in itself, like the writer, because you know it's a very, like, it doesn't matter what the characters want and what the characters do. The writer still has priority over the characters, and he or she can do what they want with the character, and thus the characters, and thus, like, it's inescapable. There's that inevitability. Like, even when Naomi Watts' character, like, I don't even think that she's a character. I thought, like, the brilliance of this movie is that, like, they once, like, the two villains leave, you just see a normal reaction. That's like,
Mm.
A, it's amazingly acted, but B, it fits in line so well with the film's like super meta commentary, because like it's it shows like a real human reaction to this type of thing. And then the writers, like, is like, nope, rein it in, come back, and then they kill him. Spoilers,
Mm.
they kill him, and it's harsh
Yeah.
and sad, and like, but it's also like just amazing too, like.
Mm. Yeah, it's I would describe it as kind of like harsh, but at the same time, I there's an element of it not taking itself too seriously. Like especially in the rewind scene where Naomi Watts tries to kill one of the kidnappers, right? And then he was like, "Where's the remote?" And then he rewinds it, and he decides to change the fate of it, and that plays into your point of like the writer having complete license and over the story, like they call the shots. There's nothing you can do. Like the story's got to end one way, and that's, I guess, like a problem with horror filmmaking. I think filmmaking in general is that characters will only have license when given by the writer. The characters themselves don't influence their own decisions. It's the writer that has license over the story. So in that way, it's kind of a comment on creativity and the stories we like, and why we're so emotionally attached to these things, regardless of like who was written by, and it's interesting.
Yeah, I think this movie is not criticizing like media and its violence so much as it criticizing writers for enabling such things, like in writing such depraved things in the first place. Which I think is just
Yeah.
like one of the most mind-blowingly brilliant concepts ever. And that remote scene is probably one of my like all-time favorite scenes at this point, because it's just so, it just like absolutely, it's such a good point. Like you said, it furthers the point that, like, these people who are being kidnapped, and or I guess they're not being kidnapped because they're in their own home, but like, like they're
Yeah.
trapped and tied up and stuff, and they're forced, like, they have, like, everything is in the hands of the writer. It doesn't matter what these characters do. It all comes back to the writer having power over everything, and
Mm.
it's just such an intimidating thought that like the writer is like the king over everything, and like no matter what happens to like a real person in the situation, they're always gonna die because they're making a horror movie and it's in the hands of these people. It's just
Exactly.
such a good deconstruction, and it's so well acted. Like you believe these are real people. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, like that's a good point too. Like the acting is like fantastic by Naomi Watts, Tim Roth. The everyone does a fantastic job. I think even the kid who is like one of the best kid actors I've ever seen, he does a
Yeah, yeah.
fantastic job as well.
He's not dumb. He doesn't like wait for his parents or anything. Like he runs, he pees his pants. Like this is something a kid would do in the situation. And it's so realistic and so impressive, and it's brilliant, you know?
Yeah, and I really like the color grading of this film as well. Like, reds are really pronounced, grays are really like kind of like washed out grays, and everything looks so like detailed and expansive, but it looks modern at the same time. So it feels very well done to me.
Yeah, parts of it reminded me of like a Yorgos Lanthimos movie because it's very dark, it's very bleak. I mean, I don't know how dark it is because it's very well lit, but like it's a very yeah, like I said, it's bleak. It feels very washed out in parts, and other parts feel very saturated. And there's just a lot of really nice contrast, and the sets are amazing. There are like little details that I picked up on that are just great. Like um, just everything just furthers like the blocking and the shots of everything is great. Like all the one takes are amazing. Like it's
Mm.
just such a neutral view of these incidents, and yet it refuses to show any violence except for that one part where they rewind it, and it didn't even happen. I just I thought it.
Yeah, that's a good point. The one time they show violence, they undo it, so it never really happened in the first place.
Yeah,
So,
it's just such a great commentary, and my dad does not like this movie because I mean, he like um it is hard and comfortable to watch, but like that's the point of it, and that's why it is so good. Like you can't really fault this movie. Like this is one of those movies where like people will praise it for the same thing other people will like decry it as.
yeah,
Like
Roger Ebert absolutely hated it. Apparently, I read a bit of his review, and he absolutely loathed it, and I
really,
can see why. Yeah, Roger Ebert. Yeah.
I'm quickly losing respect for Roger Ebert. I'm sure he was a nice man, but ugh,
Mm.
no.
Some of his takes are just not really aligned with mine. That's all. It's like his take for Freddy Got Fingered and now Funny Games. I'm getting really pissed off.
I understand his take for Got Fingered more than Funny Games, though. Like I can
I guess.
like I know that's like a satirical meta masterpiece according to you, but I know a lot of people still don't get that and hate it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just that's another discussion for another time. But the more that I watch it, the more I realize how like intuitive and kind of smart that film is. But it kind of reminds me of Funny Games in that Freddy Got Fingered kind of does what Funny Games does, but for comedy essentially. Maybe not in the same methods and filmmaking style, but it's achieving somewhat a similar goal.
So something I found so interesting about Funny Games, it doesn't break the fourth wall because there isn't a fourth wall. It's just showing real life. That's
Mm.
why Funny Games works. He's looking at the camera because you there as like an audience member are part of it all, and you are watching like a real event occurring. Like I know it's like acted out and everything, but it doesn't feel that way. It's so realistic and scary. Like you from
Mm.
the clips of the original I've seen, you can tell they're acting and they're very monotone in parts. Whereas these people act and look like real people who would absolutely do this, and it's freaking brilliant. Like it's mind-blowingly brilliant, and this is one of my all-time favorite movies, like top 5 right now. I'm really itching to rewatch it. Like this movie is amazing.
Yeah, I had that same reaction when I watched Head for the first time. Like it's absolutely mind blowing in what it's trying to achieve and how it achieves it. That's a good point. I didn't actually think about that. Um, I know it was breaking the fourth wall, but yeah, to an extent, you're actually in the movie. Like the camera is the character, albeit it's a stationary character that moves slightly, but regardless, it's a character. And
Yeah, it
mm,
has a very fly on the wall kind of shot composition and everything. It feels like you're watching real events, and that's why it's so scary, is because it's so gruelingly realistic, and it stuck with me long after I watched
yeah.
it. It will. I'm gonna buy it. I should probably watch the original. I know a lot of people love it. It has a higher score on Letterboxd than the remake, unfortunately. I mean, but
Yeah, I would have to watch the original as well eventually. But this remake is well done. I can tell you that.
yeah,
um, Also, I like how they offer no Naomi Watts' character. They're just sitting on the boat and go, oh, just push her off. She's gone. Like the
yeah,
camera doesn't even like focus on her death. It's just like incidental. It's just like, yep. It's like, and then like one of them says like, I thought she had like another hour, and it's like, yeah, well, we don't have a lot of time left, and it's like. That's kind of a reference to the fact that the film's about to end. It's like, oh shit, we haven't killed this character yet. Bye.
yeah,
Just.
and like another, like, the thing is, like, that scene like exacerbates like how, like, like, just how useless that character is in the long run, because she didn't accomplish anything. She was just there to be tortured and like then disposed of, and that comments on so many things in horror movies. And like the other thing is, like, it ends with him being like, you know well, it doesn't. The scene ends with him being like, "Plus, I'm getting hungry," and that to me was kind of like a reference to like kids shows, like kids television shows. Because I remember I used to watch like shows that like ended with like the characters going to get a snack, and so like I'm like, holy cow! That, I think that just commented on how normalized and like okay we are with this, and I was
Hmm.
just like, it's so good. Like, I'm just in awe.
I also think that "I'm hungry" line also references the own audience's tiredness of the film as well. Like, when's this film gonna be over? I want to go eat. Like, it's that would this film called how people would react to it. Like, he knew exactly what he was doing, and how to do it. And
Yeah,
mm. But that kids show one is also a good point. Like, I think it does multiple functions. So like, there's not one way to look at it. I think that this film has a lot of ways you can like look at the events and the plotting and the theming of it. It's very smart. Very smart.
yeah, because like I think you could enjoy this as a straightforward thriller. I mean, I enjoy is kind of a hyperbolic word, because this is one of the harshest movies ever made that I've seen, at least. But I mean, you can still watch it as a standalone thriller and like say, oh, that was a good thriller because it was so realistic and so tense. And then you can watch it like, as like this satirical meta deconstruction of horror movies, and I just got so much out of it. It was amazing.
Yeah, and it's it's actually the film that I feel like is closest to real life, like the way it's paced and filmed. I think it's like when I was watching, I'm like, it's like real life. Like the conversation they have, especially with the eggs and all that stuff, it feels like real life, like how a conversation is structured, and it's amazing. I didn't realize like film could capture that so well. Like I know there are limits to the medium, but this film shows that there actually maybe there aren't that many limits to it. It's just the way he films it and how the conversations happen, and it feels like it's real life. I don't know.
Yeah, this is art in its purest form. It's just an expression of an emotion, and that emotion is like just pure, depraved, disturbing, grueling horror, and like tense, like unnerving, like this could actually happen. And like that's what's so impressive about it, is because he just completely knocks down the fourth wall from beginning to end. And when Michael Pitt looks back at you multiple times, he's looking at you. He's not looking into the camera. He's looking into you. And I feel like he's just like staring into my soul when he does that. And it made me like so like I, that was initially my one complaint was that it was a little too self-indulgent. I don't think so anymore. I think the more I like read about it, and the more and more I've seen, like the more theories I've seen of it, it's getting better and better and better, and it's super impressive. And I would recommend
Yeah.
watching the Patricia Jackson video on it because it's really great. It's about half an hour long, but it's worth it. He,
Mm.
she makes a lot of really good points.
And I, similar to that, I really enjoyed the last scene where he looks in the camera, and then the music starts playing, and I'm just like, it's making fun of that whole concept of the end is built in the beginning, the loop, like oh, it's gonna happen with someone else now at the end.
Yeah,
But the music completely makes fun of that, that concept, you know?
yeah, like because in the beginning it's like so out of place. You're like, what the heck? It's like the only jump scare in the entire movie, and it's this non-diegetic music, and it's hilarious. And then like at the end, it like loops back for no reason because it's trying to do it. It wants to like show like how stupid it is, like trying to
Yeah.
tie in everything, like because the beginning of this movie is like them driving to their destination, and it ends with like the two uh the two villains like look or like the Michael Pitt's character like looking into the camera, and he wasn't in the movie for like the first 10 minutes, and
Hmm.
that was just amazing to me. And like I felt like it kind of commented on sequel bait too, like we're gonna do this exact same movie again, and you're gonna watch it and pay money for it because you're so messed up inside, you want to see all this depravity. I'm just like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Funny Games 2. Yeah, please release it.
And that's why this movie
Release
is
it.
so good, is because it's a remake of a foreign movie in American, like from like set like shot in America and everything. And like I felt like that was commenting on like how stupid and pointless remakes are. But I thought this one, like from what I've seen of the original, it surpasses the original. I thought it was so good. And like there was something else I was thinking of earlier. I don't remember what it was.
There's so
Anyways,
much to say. It's just also I like and this film was released in the 90s, but the 2000 version definitely has like a 90s edge to it. I feel like there's that rebellious 90s edge. Like I know they reference Beavis and Butthead at one point, like one for Beavis and one for Butthead at one point.
mm-hmm.
But the song they use, like um, the way the scenes are kind of framed and stuff, it's kind of 90s, but not in a dated way, but like in an edge that makes the film even more like more engrossing and depthful, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's part of what's so scary about this movie is because like the only thing that will date about this movie is like the phones, which are flip phones. But like that they had those in the 90s too. And so like it's super scary to think that this movie is as timeless as it is because like this pattern will keep repeating for years, and like this activity is timeless enough that this movie can
See.
be watched at any time, and you can still feel that scared. That's what good horror movies do. They're not like bogged down by datedness like something like Poltergeist is. This movie has no like big special effects. The only thing that it will date is the phones, and the phones like it's just so impressive that they were able to make this story as detached from reality as it was, yet so realistic.
Yeah, for sure. And I view those phones as kind of like back in the 60s they would have had different technology, so it's just a different time period. So I don't see that as kind of dated. I just see that that was just in the time period. We've changed now for sure, but that was just at a certain time. So, but there's everything else in the film is like completely relevant and would never date. And I think this is a case where I haven't seen the original, mind you, but where the acting completely like um, takes the script and kind of changes it to its own unique lane.
Hmm.
And I think it also stressed the importance of having a certain actors that will bring your vision to life. And it could, and the vision and the way the film is presented is completely different because the actors have a different interpretation of the material.
Yeah,
Mm.
this movie is like absolutely makes use of it being a movie, which I feel like some movies just don't do. Like some books or something like that. If you're trying to adapt something, you should not. Like, I know that sounds weird, but like, if it's something like Dune, which has like the worst adaptation I've ever seen, by the way, don't watch Dune. Um, like,
Lynch.
yeah, he regrets making that movie, and he won't even talk about it during interviews, and I don't blame him. But like, because that movie, because that like, it's an adaptation of one of my all-time favorite books, and so I was watching it, and I was like, this is so inaccurate. But like, don't adapt Dune. Like, just don't adapt
Mm.
it because it was meant to be read, and like Funny Games was meant to be watched. Like that was an original script, and this one is just a shot-for-shot remake of that original script. And that was like it further pointed out like the pointlessness of these remakes. Yet I felt
Mm.
like there was more point to this one because it kind of introduced American audiences to the idea. Like otherwise, like the original Funny Games wouldn't have been like a kind of known movie, you know. But like the remake is fairly well known, I would say. Like
Yeah.
and like not that many people like it because it is pretty like just it's
Mm.
out there, but I don't
Yeah.
want to say it's out there because it's so realistic, but I don't know, it's very artsy. um
Also, I think maybe the reason why people might prefer the original slightly is because it was made in a foreign country and it got released to different markets and everything. And this was a more American-based movie and released to a different market. And I think I don't want to say American audiences are, dumb per se, but
oh no, you can say
it
that.
it kind of shows you like how how kind of foreign audiences will kind of like be drawn to these more out there and ambitious films that try to like question try to question the industry and how you watch movies. And Americans, they either just didn't see its intentions or just rejected it altogether, and I find that interesting.
Yeah, because like the French have like Jean-Luc Godard and we have Michael Bay, so like it's easy to see like how like the audience would change because like I've seen like trailers for this movie and it's like marketed as like a your average like torture porn type home invasion movie, and yet it just completely mocks the audience for expecting that and wanting that. And I thought that was just it's brilliant. And like
Mm.
the thing I remembered is like once our two main villains drop out, it becomes so realistic because you're not watching characters, you're just watching like real life, like I keep saying. But like you don't want them to come back because you don't want to see people suffer, but they were the entertainment. And
Yes.
like that's why it's so like it's that's why it's so great is because like it comments on like
Hmm.
once they leave, you're just left with this sobbing, empty, sad family who's lost their
Yeah,
son.
the entertainment's gone. The entertainment's gone. Yeah.
And like I can see like people just sitting there like, holy cow, yikes. Um,
Mm.
and you know, once they come back, you're like, oh, okay, so it's like keeps moving, but like that's kind of how life is like, if once you like once the guests leave, I mean, you kind of just revert to doing nothing, just hanging out with your family, and
Exactly. Yeah.
you know, it's just it's such a amazing comment on just movies and horror movies and violence in media and just everything. It's everything. It's packed so much in, and um, I do want to just mention that the Beavis and Butthead references are amazing because like they're like kind of making fun of the idea that you know like kind of making fun of people like who are going to this movie because they're like they're calling people who watch this movie like dumb people because Beavis and Butthead is pretty dumb. It's smart dumb, but it is stupid. But it's kind of commenting like, oh, we're we're entertaining people by making other people suffer, and that's kind of what Beavis and Butthead is. Um, Not in its entirety, but there are definitely parts where they go over to um their neighbor's house and bug them and stuff, and I thought that was commenting on that. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it's weirdly similar. I mean, they don't tie up um their neighbor and torture him and kill him and stuff, but they do kind of wreck his house and his in certain episodes, and
Hmm.
that's such an interesting little detail. Is that they could be viewing themselves as these people who are just you know out to ruin somebody's life because it's fun.
Yeah, there's definitely like parallels between the show and this film. Not just in the reference, but like you said, with the whole, the type of audience that would go to see this film. Especially since it was made in the '90s, where Beavis and Butthead was very popular and stuff like that. So, um, yeah, I didn't think about that, but yeah, that's very true. There is intent behind that, and that just goes to show you how planned and how much meaning the film has. And you know, I think something can still be really have a lot of depth, and you can get a lot of it, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's pretentious. I've seen people call this film pretentious, but um, not everything that has a lot of depth and that tries to achieve what it's trying to achieve isn't necessarily pretentious. I don't know.
Yeah, looking at horror movies that came out in 2007, you had things Hostel Part 2 and Saw 4 and the Rob Zombie Halloween and Paranormal Activity. I mean, there were more acclaimed horror movies like Wreck, but that that environment was so unprepared for this movie. It just hit them like a train, and that
Yeah,
just makes it all the better.
and it's even more relevant now than it was like 12, 13 years ago, because horror's even dipped even more than in 2007, and
Hmm.
it's almost this film was ahead of the curve and of its curve. It didn't. You know, you know what I mean. Horror movies are still this. Plying dumb does this doing with its characters, and apart from some exceptions, thank God for A24. Um,
Hereditary.
Hereditary, Midsommar, The Witch, etc. Uh, but yeah, I'm glad there are films like this that exist that kind of call out these filmmakers without making just a video essay or a review. It's an actual film that kind of delves into this topic, and I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. I don't know, it's the best 10 out of 10 movie example I could give. It's perfect because anything that you might perceive as flaws are also its strengths. And
Mm.
that's why it's perfect. It's like a Yorgos Lanthimos movie. Like I said, people might not appreciate how dry and dark the humor is, but that's why I love it.
Yeah, it's like the disturbed and prying nature of this film. It's a turn off for other people, but it's something that's right up our alley, and I think the people that will appreciate and get a lot out of it. But I don't think there's anything wrong with anyone hating it as well. You can hate this film, and that's totally fine. But um, you kind of deny the amount of craft that's on display here because it's actually quite a smart movie. I doubt you could deny the amount of time and thought must have gone into make a movie like this. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Um. So I've already given my rating. What would you give it? Because
Um,
I kind of I kind of said you're not allowed to give funny games anything under a 9, but
yeah, I felt kind of scared. I felt like I was the main character in the film. I was being held hostage to give this a high rating. Um,
it does
I
deserve it
would.
though.
It actually it does. I didn't even have to lie. I this is either a 9 or a 10. I can't decide between either a 9 or a 10, but it's definitely either those two ratings. Like, absolutely fantastic film and a must watch for people who like want to try something a bit different and want to see something that's serious but comical and at the same time. Yeah.
It's a perfect blend of tones, and it's one of the best commentaries I think I've ever seen.
Mm.
It's there's so much thematic detail. It feels on par with something like A Serious Man, where like it's so detailed and just it's a beast that you have to see, and you probably won't like it, but
I mean, I most people on Letterboxd that I see, they gave a positive, but I guess genuine enjoyment, that'd be kind of harder to find, I guess. Yeah.
yeah, because
Awesome.
it's not terribly enjoyable, and that's the point.
Isn't this like your favorite movie now, or because yeah,
It's up there. Um,
mm.
it might be my favorite. I'm kind of it's it might be. There's like Spirited Away. It's been my favorite for years now. And I always say it's my favorite, but I don't know. Funny Games is just so perfect. I don't know. Like I'll flip flop back and forth between the two for a while.
Yeah.
My
Look, there's
favorite,
nothing wrong with having multiple favorites. I have multiple favorites. It's hard for me to choose like one that I just think is the best.
yeah. Like for me though, Spirited Away. We should talk about Spirited Away some other time. But
Mm.
there's like a small cluster of movies that I just consider like amazing and like my favorite movies. And so
Mm.
Spirited Away, Funny Games US, Serious Man, Magnolia, Suspiria 2018, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, The Lobster, things like that. Um,
Yeah.
that just they kind of rotate.
Yeah, I definitely have a roster like my top 20 films. I usually they're so interchangeable. It's like, well, they're all fantastic in their own way. And yeah, no, it's film. All those are films I could talk about for like eons, and I'd still find something new in them. So
Hmm.
yeah, and yeah. Although I'd say Donnie Darko for me is might be my favorite, but side, it's pretty hard.
Yeah, Donnie Darko is pretty great. I actually own that movie, which is not something I like. I don't own very many movies. Um,
Oh.
I have a complete Studio Ghibli collection, and that took me a really long time to build up. But other than that, like I have very few movies. I'm trying to expand them. The movies I do have are like either like some of my very favorites or like I don't know why, but I have Batman versus Superman. Uh, I bought it when
Wow, good choice.
I bought it when I was like 12, and I don't know why I still have it, but I do. Um,
Yeah,
and
I
then I
think you. Yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think you need to like throw it in a fire or something. I don't think you should keep that around. It's a bad omen.
It's not that bad, but yeah, it's not great.
I haven't,
Um,
I haven't, I haven't seen it, so I can't talk. But whatever.
meh.
Just all my
It's
friends hate it, so
it's
I'm
very
obliged to
bloated.
hate it.
It's very bloated. Um,
Yeah.
but most of the things I own are like TV shows. Um, like Futurama. So
Oh yeah. Well, I think there's kind of a reason to own TV shows if they're not on Netflix or streaming services and stuff. It's much easier to like have a DVD of it,
mhm.
you know. Um, yeah, I own multiple copies of Donnie Darko actually. So
Really,
yes, I own a DVD version with the theatrical and director's cut. I own a Blu-ray version of that exact same. And I just own another two normal copies of just theatrical cut. Yeah.
dang. See, I only have one, but I got the Arrow release on Blu-ray for
Oh.
I believe last Christmas. Um, and I also have like a really cool shirt that's like a mixture of like it has Frank the Rabbit's face like superimposed over like the Unknown Pleasures cover, which is really neat,
Oh.
a really neat design. I have two Joy Division shirts, and that's one of them. Um,
Oh, cool. Yeah, I have a Donnie Darko book as well. Like that has a script and an interview with Richard Kelly and stuff. That's cool.
I wondered if it was the time travel book, but That's interesting. I'll have to look it
Oh,
up.
it does have pages from that in it.
Oh,
It does
cool.
have pages from that in it. And I also have a Southland Tales graphic that was released alongside the movie that I read. So yeah.
That's hilarious. I did not know that existed.
It does exist, and it's the first 3 parts because the movie is like parts 4, 5, and 6, and the graphic novel is supposed. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, that's not one I have like immediate access to, unfortunately. So
Mm.
I don't know how soon I'm gonna see it, but yeah, I do have
Yeah, it's
interest, I think.
the thing is like I've seen it a few times, and I think that for all the flaws it has, I think it's a very well intentioned and made movie. Um, I can get so much out of it, and so many great scenes, and I think maybe it was a case of being too ambitious for its own good, but sometimes I just like reveling in that film's subtext and what it's trying to do. Yeah, it's it's a bit of a mental gymnastics for my brain whenever I try to like break down that film, but it's rewarding for me. It's rewarding.
Yeah.
Mm.
I like I
Mm.
I can't find it, so I can't really comment on it. But yeah,
It's well, if you ever get any money, there's buy for $1 on or $2 on YouTube movies. So if you ever wanna, you know, cough up that dollar, you can find it there.
all right.
Mm. Yeah.
The problem is mostly just like I don't want to. Like that's the thing. Like if it's something I can rent, I can do, but I don't want to like pay for movies like full price that I don't know if
Oh
I'll
no,
like
you
or
can
not.
rent it. You can rent it.
Okay.
You can rent it for like $2.
Okay.
I've got it on DVD as well, but um, it was just so I could see the documentary on it because how they made it and stuff, which is kind of interesting.
I am kind of scared to see The Rock act dramatically. So,
Mm. Yeah, that film is another example as well of Richard Kelly kind of like making fun of the genre and the characters and the plot developments that are usually in these films, which is something that I like in films for some reason when films trash their own genre, which is yeah.
yeah, meta commentary is it adds a lot.
Yeah, it does. It adds quite a bit of depth, for sure. Mm.
But
But
anyways, or go ahead.
I was just gonna say it should be a genre. Like there should just be a genre dedicated to meta commentary.
Definitely,
Because
it would be one of my favorites if it
yeah,
were a genre.
yeah, it would probably be my favorite genre if it existed. But anyhow, are we gonna do questions or?
Yes, but do you want to announce our new segment?
Sure. So we are gonna be doing an album review segment,
Hmm.
and we are gonna be choosing listen to and kind of have a discussion about it, or if one of us is the album, we'll just do a solo thing, whatever. But yeah, we'll just like we do with movies, we'll just have a brief segment where we just talk albums because as much as we love films, we also love music, and we always bring up music at certain points during the podcast. So it's a no-brainer that we would have like where we kind of just discuss music and whatnot.
Yeah, this is going to be this is a good decision because it gives us a segment to talk about music instead of just us like getting off track and just
Yeah.
starting to ramble about music and such. But
Mm.
anyways, on questions.
Yeah. So, do you want to start with a question?
Yeah, sure. Um, since it's October, I was wondering what some of your favorite horror movies are, or Halloweeny movies to watch.
Ooh. Um, do you mind if I just bring in my letterbox for a second? Because
Yeah, that's fine.
I really one that comes instantly to mind is Hereditary. Love that film.
Definitely.
One of my favorites. uh, I really uh, sorry to be taking my time, but
You're fine.
oh, I love Suspiria, the remake and the
Oh yeah,
Those are great,
definitely. I own both.
great horror movies. Yeah, they're yeah, I own the original on Blu-ray, and I own Suspiria, the remake on DVD. So
Cool,
yeah,
cool.
they're great. I like Coraline, if you can count that as a horror movie.
Oh, I count that as a horror movie. That thing scarred me when I was like for life, honestly. Like since I saw the trailer when I was like 7, I think. So
Mm.
it
Yeah,
like yeah,
it's not for the faint of heart, surprisingly. For a kids' film, it's actually quite intense.
it's
Like,
horrifying.
I don't understand like how they got that, like how they managed to get that through like the censors, like and get into a kids' film. It just blows my mind. I don't know how they did that, but
It's
you
an
know.
impressive feat to say the least, and it's an essential Halloween movie because it's not like strictly a horror movie. I would say it's more of a fantasy, honestly, but it has this perfect Halloween ambiance to it.
I also think Climax is a horror movie as well, so I'm counting that. That is a
Oh,
horror movie.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
That movie made me want to throw up.
Yeah, it's quite scary because I never did it myself, but I was kind of at a party where everyone was kind of like a bit like everyone had taken like a lot of weed and stuff like that. So, and it was pretty accurate to that. So like, um, folks, it's accurate. Okay, it's actually quite scary in its own way.
But did people like kick pregnant women there?
No, fortunately, that did not happen.
Were there
But
little kids who like got electrocuted?
yes, that did happen.
No way.
Oh yeah, it happened exactly as the film, and you know, actually, surprisingly, Gaspar Noé was at the party as well, which was strange. But I'm getting off topic. Yeah.
Was it like a 4 hour long party that took place at like a Japanese love hotel, perchance?
Hmm. I was a bit drunk. I can't remember, but no. Surprisingly, someone did say that that's where I was. So like maybe.
Eh, he's like somebody I would love to get into, but the problem is, like, I can't find half of his movies. Like, Climax is the only one I could find. So like, in order to
Mm.
find his other movies, I would have to like buy them or like I'd have to rent them. But nonetheless, they would show up on Amazon and stuff. And I don't want to buy like or rent Irreversible. It's like maybe in a little bit, but it's still gonna like show up as and like people are gonna like Amazon's gonna recommend me stuff like that, and that's just a little much.
Yeah. It's I don't know why he makes his film so hard to find, or his distributor does, or whoever's managing that. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's been annoying.
why do
Okay.
people why do people make movies hard to find? That's like the question. Why aren't films widely available? Dang it! Just give me
I don't
movies.
know. If we didn't have stuff like the Criterion Channel or Prime or YouTube Movies or anything, how would anyone find anything? Like, it's ridiculous. Or whatever.
Yeah, and like the library is also a good option if stuff isn't on available to rent. But if it's not
Oh yeah.
if it's not at the library and it's not on digital, you're pretty much screwed. Like I've done my extensive amounts of research on movies I can't find anywhere, and like sometimes I can find them on like DVD or Blu-ray on Amazon. Sometimes you just can't find them. There's the movie Possession. I can't find anywhere, and it's bugging the daylights out of me. But
It's like it's some. We should make a movie about some guys trying to find possession, and it leads to a wider conspiracy. It's like Under the Silver Lake, but you know, more realistic, I guess.
that would be pretty fun as like a short film. Like I
Yeah, sure.
can't find Possession anywhere. Like
Yeah.
just going to like super obscure video stores, be like, "Do you
Yeah.
have Possession? Maybe on VHS.
It's like
I don't have a VHS player.
it's like, oh, I have it on Betamax and VHS. No, I need it on DVD or Blu-ray. Ugh.
I
It's
have it
just like,
on Laserdisc.
oh yeah, if you have a laser disc player, I can give it to you.
I
Yeah,
might have to write this one out. Uh,
yeah, please. They say the best films are derived from experience, so Yeah.
I actually had an
Um.
idea where I would like record like conversations I have with people and then like put them into a movie. So it'd be more realistic. Which
um,
I don't know how much of a plot it would have, but it would be a fun experiment.
no. Yeah. That sounds interesting. Oh, you didn't. You should say some of yours because I've just been babbling on about my own.
No, it's okay. Um, well, like you said, Hereditary is great as well as both Suspiria's. Um, Evil Dead 2 is. I know most people consider it a horror movie. To me, it's a horror comedy. Um,
Mm.
um, Houseu, the Japanese horror movie, is insane, and I absolutely love it. Um,
Yeah, I really want to see that.
The Witch, Midsummer, um, which I mean, it came out this year, but it would be a great Halloween movie. Um, I watched the original Night of the Living Dead, and I really enjoyed that. Um, and then I would say I would say Psycho, the original, is a good Halloween movie. And if you're not looking for like super scary movies,
Yep.
they're like
Oh,
they're good like movies that aren't necessarily horror, that are like Coraline, that have that nice Halloween feeling.
what the
There are movies
fuck?
that I watch to get into fall, um, like Donnie Darko or
Uh,
Fantastic Mr. Fox or Rushmore, which are all really good
oh,
movies.
shit.
Hey guys, so Michael's Discord crashed during recording, so I cut that part out for brevity's sake and return to the conversation right now.
What no?
Yeah, did you have any other horror movies you wanted to recommend?
Uh. Oh, I count this as a horror film. I know you saw really recently, Videodrome.
Oh, I love
Fantastic.
Videodrome. Um,
Yeah, I saw it. With he had a really good Blu-ray copy of it, my friend, and we saw it on like a big screen. It was really great. Yeah.
yeah, I've been meaning to get into more David Cronenberg because I've seen The Fly and Videodrome, and I've absolutely loved both. Um, then again, those are like considered his two best movies, but still.
Yeah, he's from what I've seen, I haven't seen a lot of his films, but he's a great director from what I've seen.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, sure. Um, what are some? Because I swear this will be the last time that a music question will be asked, like in a non-music segment. But what would you say are like some of your favorite albums of the decade? Because the decade's coming to a close.
Ooh, the
So
decade. Oh, well.
yeah,
This would be a lot easier if I had Rate Your Music, but
yeah.
those jerks
I
banned
if you
me.
need time to think, if you need time to think, I can just list off some of mine.
Um, yeah, go ahead.
Uh, well, obviously, To Pimp a Butterfly is an amazing album. Definitely one of the best of the decade. Uh, Titanic Rising is personally like one of my favorite of the decade. Um, I think that um, Blonde by Frank Ocean, while everyone loves it, I love it too. It's definitely one of up there as like one of the most like distinct and great records of the decade. Um, you know, I don't love it, but The Money Store is definitely like the most one of the most influential in abstract hip hop.
See, I
It's
love The
definitely one
Money
of the best.
Store, so I would say that's one of the best of the decade.
Yeah, it's a great record. Pretty much a lot of Def Grips records you could put in like the top 100 of the decade, really. Like
Mhm.
they have some good albums. What else? I do think some records this year are definitely in the decade. Like I really liked. I think that the Angel Olsen album, Newman fucking Rockwell by Lana Del Rey is definitely should
Absolutely.
be amongst the
Absolutely.
best of the decade. Uh, what else? I think that it's not like the best album ever, but Lemonade by Beyonce is definitely one of the best of the decade.
Well, yeah, I really like that album more than most these days, honestly.
Yeah, and I think that Flower Boy especially should be considered one of the best of the decade.
Yeah. Um, as for me, To Be Kind by Swans. I mean, all of Swans albums this decade, as well as all of Nick Cave's albums this decade. Um, and then plays the music of Twin Peaks by Shoo Shoo. Those are definitely my answers. So like The Seer, To Be Kind, The Glowing Man for Swans, and then Dig Lazarus Dig, There's the Skyway, Skeleton Tree, and Ghostine by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds
Oh yeah,
are all
yeah,
phenomenal.
yeah. I mean, there's so many picks. It's hard to even do like a top 10. Like I probably couldn't do a top 10. Like it's too hard. There's too many great albums. But um,
Top two.
Nostalgia Critics, The Wall. That's the best of the decade. Or
uh, that's gonna be a
no.
yikes from me, dog.
You know what? Unrate Your Music. It's actually the lowest rated album in the charts. I'm
Really?
not joking. Yes.
I don't blame them.
I mean, it is really bad, so I can see why.
Yeah, like, cause like, wasn't the previous one like Tom McDonald?
Yeah, Death Race or something, whatever it's called.
Yeah, I think I listened to it, but like, it's just like the same song over and over. So I just stopped listening to it after a while. Because it was
Yeah,
just
it's like,
like, it's so long, and it's just like, why does this even exist? Just like the same thing over and over.
his music solely exists to just like bait people and just sprout his like stupid like half thought out beliefs essentially.
I don't like the nostalgia critic.
Exactly, but you know, I guess it hit a chord even more because he was making fun of an album everyone loves. So, you know,
I mean, not
well, not
everybody
everyone.
loves it, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, at least the nostalgia critic is harmless. Like, I can see people listening to Tom McDonald and like being like, yeah, yeah, like agreeing with him.
Yeah.
Like somebody gullible enough to buy into his beliefs. Like, I could see somebody like kind of being drawn in by that toxicity, and that kind of scares me because he could have influence. Whereas the Wall album is like the nostalgia critic Wall album is just stupid, but it doesn't. It's harmless. It doesn't really affect anybody.
No, it's just a stupid parody album that people have been blowing really out of proportion, I guess, in a way. But it is really bad. But worst of all time, I don't think so.
I mean, uh, like there are worse albums. Um,
Hmm.
I saw on Twitter there was an album like that's literally somebody having sex with a corpse.
Oh.
I did not listen to it, but
Oh Jesus.
that could easily be one of the worst albums ever. But I'm not about to
Jesus.
listen to it, so
Oh. Oh jeez. Is it like field recording? What is it? Is it actual music or?
I don't know. Like I would like at least the Wall parody album I would count as music. I like see I don't I wouldn't count that as music, so I don't think
Hmm.
that even applies. But I mean,
Do
if
you
you want to count it,
do you still like the A Crow Looked at Me parody album? Do you still like that?
yes, it's funny. Dang it! Yeah, it's repetitive. I don't think it's perfect. I think it's really repetitive, but so is the freaking album. I think it makes really good points, and I think I'm in the
I don't
minority
know.
on that. I thought it
I
was one
I
of the
think
funniest things,
mm,
like to see like everybody hate it. Um, like
yeah, it was intentionally made to piss off people. Like
yeah, and like I thought for what it was, like I thought that again it is repetitive, but I thought the joke was funny, and I thought it made a good point. Like it's not great because he's obviously in a mourning period, but like trying to sell that is like I don't know. It does feel kind of
mm.
kind of
I guess I could see the point behind it, but it's kind of tasteless in a way that people had a really strong emotional response to the original album, and Phil was kind of suffering through like a depression. So, you know, the backlash is really kind of justified, but at the same time, like I personally don't think it's like I can't get too mad at it. It's just yeah, it's just a stupid joke.
see. I don't know. Like I can see it being tasteless to some extent. Like if somebody made like a parody of Skeleton Tree, I would be absolutely furious. But like The thing is, I don't like A Crow Looked at Me that much. I don't like Phil Elverum that much. I think his voice is annoying. He's like
Mm.
one of my least favorite folk artists, honestly. Like I like his work with the microphones, but his solo work is not appealed to me in the slightest. And like it is kind of blown out of proportion and repetitive, that parody album, but it at its core has some good points, and
Yeah.
parts of it are funny. I will not lie. Um,
Mm.
does it need to exist? Not necessarily, but it does, and for what it is, I think it works fine.
Yeah. Well, I'm just not gonna 5-star it anytime soon. That's all I'm saying.
I don't think it's a 5-star album. I just did that to piss off people.
In classic Beatles fiend fashion.
Yes.
Yeah.
They didn't
Um.
de-weight me for it though, which is nice. They de-weighted
Oh
me
wow,
for
they didn't.
de-weighted me for something else. Though. I don't remember. Oh, it was that
Was it the?
that bottoms up song that nobody remembers anymore.
Oh yeah. See, I ended up just giving it my legit rating, so that's probably why I didn't get dewated. But
Yeah, I just unrated it because I was like, it's a single. I'm gonna forget about it, so I'm just not gonna
yeah,
rate it. Um,
fair enough.
they were
Could
gonna
you
de-weight me for Peppa Pig though, so that's what got me in trouble.
Oh yeah, the whole Peppa Pig thing. Um. Uh, Someday you'll be allowed back on our RYM, but
I don't
until
think
that day.
so. The discussion is permanently closed. Like I've tried to make another account, believe me, they won't let me back on.
Oh jeez. Do they like know your IP so you can't get back on?
Well, they know my email, and so they're like, it's like you are banned. Like
Wow.
you can't make another account, and I'm like, oh,
Oh.
well, crap.
You
I guess that's
you
fair.
could yeah. Unless you get a different email or try to do it on a different IP address, you could probably get away with it. I don't
Even then, after a while, I think people would detect that it was me from like my ratings.
know. No, maybe.
But
But like, you may as well try it once. What's the worst that could happen? They block you again? Okay.
yeah, yeah, I don't know. Like them
Yeah.
de-weighting me is just like a form of gatekeeping, and they need to just honestly just fuck off with that shit. Like
Yeah.
seriously, I don't want to get into it, but like they don't have the freaking right to do that.
No.
It's so stupid. It is
No,
so
I
stupid.
think it's absurd. It's just like you get banned for the most trivial, jokey, fun things, you know, that don't do any harm to anyone. It's not
Yeah,
like you're abusing people. You're just having a small joke. And, because they're gatekeepers and they want to kind of just enforce this policy they have, they just go, oh, we're just going to ban this guy who's been on the site for a few years and has brought up a rep and, I don't know, it's a bit disappointing, honestly.
yeah. It's like Franconia got banned from the site, even though he could have just been banned from genre voting, which I thought was the stupidest
Yeah.
thing. Like, why don't you just ban him from genre voting? Why ban him at all? It was a joke to begin with. Like letterboxd moderators, they know how to take a joke. I mean, if somebody's calling somebody else gay slurs, then remove the comment or get rid of them. However, most people, like a lot of people, make jokey reviews on Letterboxd, and that's fine. I don't know why
Yeah.
written music has to be like the super professional site.
I don't, no one views it in that way except for the mods and the people who made it. Like, it's taken on a different meaning now than when they initially started it. So I think they need to go with that. They can't change it now. Like, no matter what they do, it's impossible.
Yeah, I don't know. That's all I'm gonna say about written music.
Mm.
I've moved on. Um, I
Yeah.
still listen to a lot of music, and it was really nice having that database to store my music ratings on. But
Oh.
like
Yeah.
removing that, I still have all my ratings. Like I can still export them. They're not sorted at all, and that bugs the daylights out of me. But like it starts out like alphabetical by artist, and then it switches to alphabetical by album, and then alphabetical by it goes back to alpha by artist again.
Um,
It's such a mess. Nothing lines up right, and like I don't know. It like I can't like
yeah.
export it to Word or anything because like it's a mess of coding and everything because there's like so many like commas and everything. It's just it would take days to clean up, and I don't want to do that. So instead,
No.
I have a little a notepad thing on my computer. I just store ratings for albums that come out, and hopefully when if and when I get reinstated, which I won't, but if I ever make a new account, I can put them back onto Rate Your Music. But as it stands,
Yeah. It's I just like comparing my rating with others and your rating, and that was always interesting, a good resource. But now that it's gone, it's like, oh, I wonder what John thinks of this, and it's like I have to actually ask. It's like,
well,
well,
there's
usually,
always. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, usually post to Twitter about it anyway. Like I've
Yeah,
seen
yeah.
you do tweets about it.
There's always my Twitter feed because I do try and post and keep people posted about my scores and everything. But there's always those albums that grow on me and things that grow off me that I would always want to change. So it's frustrating not having that, and I think the mods are full of shit. But
Yeah.
as a whole, I've moved on. I've accepted it. So
Yeah. Well, Letterboxd is better anyway, because like you can literally make the reviews however you want. You can make them as serious or wacky as you want, and I appreciate that.
and there's an app, and everybody's much nicer. The mods aren't gatekeeping snobs, and like I like the design a lot more, especially when compared to like the new written music sites, which are just like Cinemic and everything, which I don't
Oh
think
yeah.
look anywhere near as nice as the old ones. I thought the old ones had a nice charm to them. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's about it. That's my written
Yeah.
music rant. Um,
No, it does a lot right, but it also does a lot wrong in terms of how it's managed and whatnot. Hmm.
so are
Um,
you about ready to recommend some stuff?
yeah, so I had two films that I was tossing between recommending, but it's one that I see a lot of hype about, and I think it's like a thriller slash horror, so it's keeping in mind with like the October type theme. I want to do You Were Never Really There. With
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. The Lynn Ramsey movie. All right, yeah,
yep, yeah, with Joaquin Phoenix. Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Mm.
I've been wanting to watch that one for a while too, so that'll be cool. Um, as for me, funny little anecdote. So initially, I was going to recommend Psycho, but Michael here just watched Psycho. So then I
Yeah,
switched. After that, I
I
switched
didn't
to
realize.
Train Spotting, and then I realized he's like, oh, I've seen it. So then I switched to Black Swan, and then I realized he's already seen it. So, um,
Yeah, I've seen every film. You can't escape.
yeah, it's been pretty crazy, but I think this is hard. I'm not sure what I'm gonna offer you this. Two Emil Hirsch movies. We can either do Into the Wild or Speed Racer.
Ooh. Okay. Now I want to see both really badly, but mm, seeing as you've seen it, I think the discussion might be slightly more, a bit more hilarious. I think we should do Speed Racer. Mm.
All right. Well, I'm fine with that because I love Speed Racer. So, all right,
Okay, cool.
we'll do Speed Racer.
I guess we're doing Speed Racer on the podcast. Yeah, it's gonna be a double bill of You Were Never Really There in Speed Racer. I don't think anyone's ever done that before, but
It,
yeah,
it will be a fun time for everyone.
for all. And yeah, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Diabolicast um, with me and Jonathan. Me relevant links are in the description. And yeah, thanks for listening.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
See you guys next week.
Yes. Adios.
All right. Bye.
Bye.